The void around the dead system of Sol 7 suddenly lit up with bright flashes as 300 massive warships appeared out of nowhere. These ships belonged to the Galactic Coalition, and they were here to finish what they had started years ago. Their metal hulls gleamed in the starlight, and their weapon systems were already warming up for what their commanders thought would be the final battle against humanity. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship called the Dominion's Edge. He was a tall reptilian creature with green scales and sharp yellow eyes. His hands were folded behind his back as he looked at the screens showing the battle area. In front of him, near the dying star, were 12 small human ships that looked beaten and damaged. These were all that was left of the human race after years of running and hiding. "Finally," Kethvar said through his needle-like teeth, "the humans have nowhere left to run." On the human flagship called Last Hope, Captain Kim Hyun-woo stood calmly at his command post. He was a middle-aged man with dark hair and serious eyes. His crew of barely 300 people worked quietly at their stations, even though they were facing 50,000 enemy soldiers. "Sir," said Lieutenant Park Min-ho from his communication station, "Admiral Kethvar wants us to surrender right now." Hyun-woo's face showed no fear. At 52 years old, he had watched human colonies burn and seen their fleets scattered across the galaxy. But there was something calm about him that even made his own crew feel uneasy. "Open a channel to all coalition ships," he ordered. The reptilian admiral's face appeared on the main screen. His yellow eyes glowed with the excitement of victory. "Captain Hyun-woo, I think? Your people's time is over. Give up now and maybe some of you will live to work in our prison camps." Hyun-woo stepped forward and put his hands behind his back. When he spoke, his voice was calm and deadly quiet. "Admiral Kethvar, you have made a very big mistake. You think you have trapped us here." A small smile appeared on his face. "But you have no idea what you have just walked into." "The Coalition." Commander laughed harshly. "Big words from a dead man. You have 12 ships against 300. Your weak species has been leading you here for 3 years. Hyun-woo interrupted softly. Something in the human's voice made Kethvar stop talking. Around the bridge of the Dominion's Edge, other Coalition officers looked at each other with worry. "That's not possible," the Admiral said angrily. "We have been hunting you across half the galaxy. Every battle, every defeat, every lesson learned." Hyun-woo finished. "Did you really think we were just running away? That we were only trying to stay alive?" His smile grew bigger. "Admiral, you are about to learn why trapping a human is the last mistake you will ever make." Before Kethvar could answer, alarm sounds started going off on Coalition ships. The soldiers watching the sensors called out in confusion as their instruments detected huge energy readings throughout the Sol 7 system. These energy readings had been completely hidden just moments before. "What is that?" Kethvar demanded, turning toward his tactical officer. The insect-like creature's many eyes reflected the growing light on his displays. "Sir, the entire system is turning on. Whatever is happening, it's very big." On the human flagship, Lieutenant Lee So-young looked up from her sensor station. Her voice was steady even though what she was reading was incredible. "Captain, all platforms are coming online. Sol 7 defense grid is fully working." Hyun-woo nodded, once then looked back at the screen where Admiral Kethvar's confident face was quickly changing to something that looked like fear. The dead planets of Sol 7 began to glow. What had looked like empty rocks around a dying star now blazed with patterns of light. Ancient defense platforms that had been sleeping for over 200 years started coming out of crater walls and asteroid fields like sleeping giants waking up to protect their home. "You wanted to trap us, Admiral," Hyun-woo said softly. "Congratulations, you have just flown 300 ships into humanity's oldest trap." On Coalition ships, chaos erupted as sensor operators reported thousands of new contacts appearing throughout the system. The platforms were everywhere, hidden in asteroid belts and built into moons. They had been waiting for this exact moment. Kethvar's scaled fist crashed down on his command console. "This is impossible. Our scouts checked this system completely. It was dead. Nothing but rocks and radiation." Captain Hyun-woo's voice came through the communication channel, still maddeningly calm. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Did you think we would leave our final home unprotected? The platforms were not just weapons. They were smart systems designed to learn and fight against whatever technology they faced. Each one contained technology taken from every species humanity had ever met, all built into weapons that could adapt to any known threat. The Coalition fleet, which had been so confident just minutes before, now found themselves surrounded by thousands of defense platforms. They had walked into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The dead worlds of Sol 7 began to wake up from their long sleep. What had looked like empty rocks floating around a dying star now blazed with bright geometric patterns of light. Ancient defense platforms that had been hidden for over 200 years started emerging from crater walls and asteroid fields like sleeping giants opening their eyes to defend their home. On the Coalition flagship Dominion's Edge, panic spread across the command deck like wildfire. Our scanning stations are reporting over 4,000 individual targets, the tactical officer said, his voice getting higher with each word. They are everywhere, sir. Hidden in the asteroid belt, camouflaged on planet surfaces, even built into the outer moons of the system. Admiral Kethvar's scaled fist crashed down on his command console so hard it cracked the metal. This is impossible. Our scout ships checked this system very carefully. It was dead. Nothing but rock and deadly radiation. Captain Hyunwoo's voice came through the communication channel, still annoyingly calm and controlled. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Did you really think we would leave our final safe place without any protection? On the human flagship Last Hope, the bridge crew worked with smooth precision that came from years of practice. Commander Yoon Ji-hai, who was Hyunwoo's second in command, talked with defense platforms that had been waiting for this exact moment for many generations. Platform groups. Alpha through Gamma, report they are ready for battle, she announced, clearly. Adaptive weapon systems are studying Coalition fleet types and adjusting their settings accordingly. Lieutenant Park Min-ho looked up from his station, his young face showing a mix of wonder and determination. Sir, the platforms are asking for target priorities. They have identified Coalition command ships and are ready to attack. Hyunwoo studied the tactical display where red dots representing Coalition ships now found themselves completely surrounded by thousands of blue contacts. Each platform was a masterpiece of human engineering. They were not just weapons, but adaptive systems designed to learn and counter whatever technology they faced. Tell them to wait, he ordered. Let our guests understand what they are facing first. The platforms had been humanity's greatest secret, built during the early days when humans still had the resources and time for such massive projects. Each platform contained technology that had been reverse engineered from every species humanity had ever encountered. Zephyri plasma conduits, Krathi shield generators, Vorthak quantum computers, and dozens of other innovations were all built into weapon systems that could adapt to any known threat. On a Coalition destroyer, Captain Veltar of the water-breathing, Nurathi race stared at his sensors with growing horror. These readings show that these platforms are using our own technology against us. How is that possible? His question was answered by a transmission from another Coalition ship. The humans have been studying us. Every ship they lost, every prisoner we took, they were gathering information about us. The terrible realization spread through the Coalition fleet like a deadly disease. The humans had not just been running away from them, they had been learning. Every defeat had been turned into data. Every captured piece of technology had been reverse engineered and built into these hidden fortresses. On the planet Sol 7C, massive doors that had been sealed shut for centuries made loud groaning sounds as they opened. Inside were weapon positions that were bigger than anything in the Coalition fleet. The installations were not just defensive weapons. They were adaptive, able to change their power output and targeting systems based on whatever enemy they faced. Captain, Hyunwoo opened a communication channel to the entire Coalition fleet. You have spent years hunting us, Admiral Kethvar. You have destroyed our colonies, scattered our fleets, and driven us to this single system. But did you ever wonder why we never stopped fighting? Why we never truly ran away? The tactical display showed Coalition ships beginning to form defensive formations, but their movement seemed slow and uncertain. They were facing an enemy they had never seen before, an enemy that had been preparing for this exact moment for over 2 centuries. Every battle you won taught us something new, Yunwu continued. Every ship you destroyed gave us information about your weapons and fighting methods. Every human you captured eventually told us about your weaknesses, whether they wanted to or not. Commander Yoon Ji-hee stepped closer to her captain. The platforms are reporting they are fully ready for combat. All systems are online and adaptive. Computers are locked onto Coalition ship signatures. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. The trap was complete. 300 Coalition ships representing the military might of a dozen different species had willingly flown into a system that had been turned into the galaxy's most sophisticated killing field. Throughout the Sol 7 system, the platforms continued to emerge from their hiding places. Some rose from deep craters on airless moons. Others detached themselves from asteroids where they had been disguised as ordinary rocks. Still others unfolded from positions on planet surfaces where they had waited patiently for centuries. Each platform was unique, designed to counter specific types of threats. Some specialized in energy weapons, others in kinetic projectiles. Some were built to jam communications, others to disable engines. Together they formed a web of destruction that no fleet could hope to break through. "You wanted to corner us," Hyunwoo said into the open channel, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of preparation. "Now you will learn why that was a mistake." The awakening was complete. Humanity's final gambit was ready to unfold. Across Coalition space, on 100 different worlds and 1,000 ships, humans who had been thought dead or captured began to move. They came out of work camps, slipped away from prison centers, and left their jobs as good citizens of the Coalition. The great lie that had taken decades to build was finally being revealed. On the bridge of the Last Hope, Captain Hyunwoo watched as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. His communications officer, Lieutenant Lee So-young, talked with secret agents that had been sleeping for years, waiting for this moment. "Captain, we are getting confirmations from Omega Protocol assets," she reported. "Sector 7, supply station on Krex Prime is now offline. Sector 12, communication tower at Vorthak, station has been cut. Sector 18, the shipyard at New Zephyria is reporting massive system failures." Commander Yoon Ji-hee studied the tactical display with satisfaction. "The Coalition is learning what we discovered long ago. Wars are not won by fleets alone." Admiral Kethvar's reptilian features twisted with rage as similar reports reached his command staff. "How?" he demanded. "We checked every human, questioned every prisoner, watched every settlement." The answer came from Captain Hyunwoo's calm voice over the communication channel. "You made the same mistake everyone makes when they meet humanity. For the first time. You thought we think like you do." On the human flagship, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency that showed years of preparation. These were not desperate survivors making a last stand. They were the people carrying out a plan that had been decades in the making. "You see," Hyunwoo continued, "other species come from prey animals or pack hunters. You understand fear or control. But humans? We are persistence hunters. We do not give up, we do not forget, and we never stop learning." The tactical display showed the Sol 7 defense platforms beginning to charge their weapons. Each installation represented not just firepower, but centuries of gathered knowledge about Coalition weaknesses. Lieutenant Park Min-ho looked up from his station. "Sir, we are getting transmission from the Heritage. Captain Nam Dong-woo reports. His research team has finished their work. The Coalition databases have been fully compromised. Even this discovery had been planned. While the Coalition believed they were hunting scattered human survivors, teams of human scientists and researchers had been systematically breaking into their information networks, mapping their infrastructure, and finding critical, weak points. Every human you captured told you exactly what we wanted you to know, Hyunwoo explained to the increasingly worried Coalition fleet. Every broken prisoner who told you the location of our hidden bases was leading you further into our trap. Every defeated colony gave us more information about your methods. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Kethvar's tactical officer delivered increasingly bad reports. Sir, our forces throughout the galaxy are reporting coordinated attacks. It is not random. They are hitting specific targets with perfect accuracy. The reptilian admiral's eyes narrowed as understanding began to come to him. They knew. Somehow they knew exactly where to strike. Captain Hyunwoo's response carried a note of grim satisfaction. We knew, because you told us. Every questioning session revealed more about your supply lines. Every successful attack against our positions gave us insight into your operating procedures. You have been teaching us how to destroy you for years. On the bridge of the human vessel Defiance, Captain Kim Tae-hyun worked with resistance cells on occupied worlds. The humans had not just been gathering information, they had been organizing, building networks of liberation among the coalition's oppressed subjects. The Altarian resistance reports successful strikes against 3 major coalition installations. He reported to the fleet. The Centauri freedom fighters have taken control of the orbital platforms. Even the Vega colonies are rising up. This was humanity's true strategy revealed. They had not been trying to win through military might. They had been building the foundation for a galactic revolution. Every defeat had planted seeds of rebellion. Every scattered human survivor had become an organizer for oppressed species throughout coalition space. The scope of the deception was staggering. For decades, humans had allowed themselves to be captured, relocated, and integrated into coalition society. But instead of being broken by their captivity, they had used it as an opportunity to study their enemies from within. Every human laborer in coalition factories had been mapping critical systems. Every human servant in coalition households had been gathering intelligence on military movements. Every human prisoner had been a willing sacrifice, accepting interrogation and torture to maintain the illusion of defeat, while secretly building the network that would bring down their oppressors. Admiral Kethvar finally understood the scope of what he faced. This is not a last stand, he whispered. This is a coordinated uprising. The revelation went deeper than military strategy. The humans had not just been preparing to fight. They had been preparing to free everyone under coalition rule, every oppressed species, every enslaved world, every conquered civilization had been secretly contacted and organized. Captain Hyunwoo's final transmission to the coalition fleet carried the weight of inevitability. You cornered us, Admiral, but in doing so you revealed your greatest weakness. You never learned to think like prey that refuses to die. The trap was not just military, it was psychological, strategic, and moral. The coalition had cornered not just humanity, but the very idea of freedom itself. And now that idea was breaking free. Space around Sol 7 exploded in coordinated fury as 4,000 defense platforms opened fire at the same time. The coalition fleet, which moments before had been confident in their overwhelming numbers, found themselves facing an enemy that learned faster than they could respond. Plasma bolts that should have cut through human shields were absorbed and redirected back at their own ships. Quantum torpedoes designed to phase through armor instead exploded harmlessly against barriers that changed their structure in real time. This is impossible, Admiral Kethvar snarled as his flagship's weapons failed to penetrate even the smallest human defense platform. Our plasma cannons use Zephyri technology. They should cut through anything. His tactical officer's compound eyes reflected the growing chaos on the display screens. Sir, they are using modified versions of our own shield generators. Somehow they have improved our designs. Captain Hyunwoo's voice carried across the battle space with calm authority. 200 years of preparation, Admiral. We did not just study your weapons, we perfected them. The defense platforms moved with terrifying coordination. They're adaptive, systems learning from each exchange of fire. When coalition ships adjusted their weapon frequencies, the platforms compensated within seconds. When they changed their attack patterns, the human defenses evolved countermeasures in real time. On the last hope, Lieutenant Lee So-young coordinated the symphony of destruction with practiced efficiency. Platform Cluster Delta reports successful adaptation to Krathi disruptor technology. They are requesting permission to share the countermeasures with Alpha and Gamma clusters. Granted, Commander Yoon Ji-hai responded. All platforms implement synchronized defensive protocols. What followed was a demonstration of technology that no single species could have achieved. The platforms did not just use reverse-engineered coalition equipment. They combined innovations from dozens of civilizations into weapon systems that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen. But the true devastation was not happening in the Sol 7 system. Across coalition space, the coordinated uprising that had been decades in the making reached its peak. On Krex Prime, the coalition's largest supply depot, human operative Captain Lee Jin-wook led a team of Altarian rebels in seizing control of the facility's automated systems. All supply routes to the Outer Rim are now cut, he reported through encrypted channels. Coalition forces in 16 sectors will be without supplies within 48 hours. At the Vorthak shipyards, Commander Park Soo-jin had spent 5 years working as a reformed human laborer, all while mapping every critical system. When the signal came, she and her team of disguised operatives disabled the facility's primary reactors, stranding 3 coalition battle groups without repair capabilities. The uprising was not limited to human operatives. Across 100 worlds, species that had been conquered and controlled by the coalition found themselves with weapons, intelligence, and coordination they had never possessed before. The humans had been organizing them for years, teaching them to fight not as scattered rebels but as a unified resistance. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical display transform from a symbol of coalition power into a map of total strategic collapse. Red warning indicators appeared throughout coalition space as supply lines were cut, communication networks disrupted, and key installations captured or destroyed. How many? He demanded. How many humans were hiding among us? The answer came not from his staff but from Captain Hyun-woo's transmission. Enough. Every labor camp, every occupied world, every coalition facility had at least one human who was reporting, organizing, and preparing. You thought you had scattered us, but you actually helped us spread throughout your entire civilization. The defense platforms around Sol 7 had adapted to every weapon in the coalition arsenal. Ships that had dominated their respective sectors for decades found themselves outgunned by installations that learned and evolved with each passing moment. Captain Kim Tae-hyun, commanding the human vessel Rising Dawn, coordinated with the platform networks while monitoring the galactic situation. Captain Hyun-woo, we are receiving confirmations from all sectors. The Omega Protocol is 93% successful. Coalition infrastructure throughout the galaxy is compromised. The coalition fleet began to break formation as individual captains realized the scope of the disaster. This was not just a military defeat, it was the complete collapse of their interstellar empire. Every conquered species was rising up. Every supply line was cut. Every strategic advantage they had held was disappearing. Coalition ships that tried to retreat found their escape routes blocked by more defense platforms. Those that attempted to regroup discovered that their communication systems had been infiltrated and their coordination efforts sabotaged from within. On dozens of coalition worlds, human sleeper agents revealed themselves not as conquerors, but as liberators. They opened prison camps, distributed weapons to oppressed populations, and provided the technical knowledge needed to overthrow local coalition authorities. The battle around Sol 7 had become a slaughter. Coalition ships exploded one after another, as the adaptive platforms found weaknesses in their designs that even their own builders had not known existed. The platforms did not just destroy. They learned, shared information, and became more effective, with each target eliminated. You wanted to corner us, Captain Hyun-woo said as coalition ships began attempting to retreat from the Sol 7 system. Instead, you cornered yourselves. Every human you thought you had defeated, every world you believed you had pacified, every victory you celebrated, all of it was building toward this moment. Admiral Kethvar's flagship shuddered under fire from platforms that seemed to anticipate his every tactical decision. This is not possible, he whispered. One species cannot orchestrate something this vast. You are right, Hyun-woo replied. One species cannot. But we did not do this alone. Where 300 coalition ships had once shown absolute power, now barely 50 remained working. clustered in a defensive formation around Admiral Kethvar's damaged flagship. The Sol 7 defense platforms had stopped firing not because they were tired, but because there were no more targets worth shooting at. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Last Hope, watching as the last pieces of coalition power tried to understand what had happened to them. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, talking not with military units, but with liberation forces across the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Lee So-young reported, "we are receiving confirmations from all sectors. The Altarian Council has declared independence. The Centauri Commonwealth is reforming. Even the Vega colonies have established their temporary government." Commander Yoon Ji-hai studied the galactic display with satisfaction. 47 worlds have declared their freedom in the last 6 hours. The coalition's territorial control has collapsed to less than 30% of their former holdings. This had always been humanity's true goal. Not military conquest, but galactic liberation. Every human who had surrendered to coalition forces, every prisoner who had been questioned, every survivor who had been moved to occupied worlds had been working toward this moment. Admiral Kethavar's transmission crackled with desperation and anger. "You have destroyed the galaxy's stability." The coalition brought order to dozens of chaotic systems. Captain Hyunwoo's response was measured, carrying the weight of centuries of human observation. "You brought order through oppression. We are offering something different. Freedom through cooperation." The communication channels filled with reports from across known space. Captain Nam Dong-woo, commanding the research vessel Heritage, had done more than break into coalition databases. He had been secretly giving advanced human technologies to oppressed species, giving them the tools they needed to defend their newfound independence. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-ho called out, "we are receiving a priority transmission from the Altarian resistance leader. They are requesting technical assistance in establishing their own defense networks." This, too, had been part of the plan. Humanity had not wanted to replace the coalition's control with their own. Instead, they had prepared to share their knowledge, to help each liberated species develop the ability to defend themselves and govern their own affairs. Captain Kim Tae-hyun's voice carried across the fleet communication network. "All stations, we are receiving formal requests for alliance from 18 different species. They are not asking us to lead them. They want to stand with us as equals." Admiral Kethvar's flagship limped closer to the human formation, its weapons powered down in a gesture of surrender. The reptilian commander's image appeared on the main screen, his scaled features showing a mixture of defeat and grudging respect. "What do you want from us?" he asked simply. Captain Hyunwoo stepped forward, his expression serious but not hostile. "The same thing we offered everyone else. A choice. You can try to keep your reduced territory through force, fighting endless rebellions, until your civilization collapses. Or you can join us in building something better." The human captain pointed toward the tactical display showing the transformed galaxy. "Look around you, Admiral. Dozens of species that spent centuries fighting each other are now working together. The Altarians are sharing medical technology with the Centaurians. The Vega colonies are providing resources to help rebuild worlds your forces destroyed. This is not conquest. This is cooperation." Across the coalition fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Human operatives who had spent years hidden in coalition society were revealing themselves not as conquerors, but as ambassadors of a different way of thinking. Commander Park Soo-jin, broadcasting from the liberated Vorthax shipyards, addressed coalition personnel throughout the sector. "We are not here to destroy your civilization. We are here to show you that there is an alternative to ruling through fear." The defense platforms around Sol 7 began powering down their weapons, but their sensors remained active, not to threaten, but to protect. The system that had been humanity's final trap was transforming into something else entirely. A symbol of defensive cooperation, rather than aggressive expansion. Admiral Kethvar studied the tactical displays showing the new galactic political landscape. Everywhere the coalition had once held absolute control, new alliances were forming. Voluntary, associations of species working together for mutual benefit rather than hierarchical dominance. How? He asked quietly. How did you coordinate something this vast without us detecting it? Captain Hyunwoo's smile was sad but determined. The same way every successful resistance movement in history has worked, through patience, sacrifice, and the understanding that freedom is worth fighting for, even if you do not live to see it. The final transmission from the human fleet was broadcast across all known space, reaching every species, every world, every individual who had lived under coalition rule. Today marks not the end of one empire and the beginning of another, but the start of something never seen before in galactic history. A true alliance of equals. We invite every species, every world, every individual to join us not as subjects, but as partners in building a galaxy where cooperation replaces conquest, where diversity strengthens rather than divides, and where freedom is not a privilege to be given, but a right to be protected. As the transmission ended, Admiral Kethvar found himself facing a choice that would determine not just his own fate, but the future of his entire species. Around him, other coalition commanders were making similar decisions. Whether to hold onto the failed dream of dominance or embrace the uncertain hope of cooperation. The battle for Sol 7 was over. The war for the galaxy's future was just beginning.